Welcome to the listener's void. Here, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, where the familiar world recedes, we find ourselves on the precipice of understanding. Tonight, we venture further into that shadowed realm. Tonight's stories are darker, their roots burrowing into anxieties that are profoundly, uncomfortably human. Deeper they go, past the superficial shivers, touching upon the primal dread that slumbers within us all. And as a consequence, they are more disturbing than before, for they reflect not just external phantoms, but the unsettling landscapes of our own minds. These are not mere entertainments, not simply tales to quicken the pulse for a fleeting moment. These aren't just ghost stories, they are echoes of experiences that have left indelible marks on those who endured them. They're warnings, whispered from the edge of perception, cautionary accounts of what happens when the veil thins, when the ordinary cracks to reveal something other. They speak of boundaries crossed, of presences uninvited, and of the terrifying fragility of our perceived reality. Consider them maps of treacherous territories, where the unwary might easily lose their way. So prepare yourselves. The journey requires a certain surrender. Extinguish the lamps, silence the distractions of the mundane world. Let the darkness become your companion, your confidant. Settle in and allow the silence to amplify the whispers that are about to emerge from the void. So, turn off the lights, and whatever you do, don't stop listening. The narratives that follow demand your attention, for they are patient and they are waiting to be heard, to be felt, to perhaps even find a new home within your own quiet spaces. In the intricate ecosystem of an apartment building, each unit is a territory, its occupant a creature of habit. Young Zoe, new to this particular habitat, sought solace in her chosen space. The landlord, a gatekeeper of sorts, had mentioned the vacancy of 6C, the unit directly above. A simple fact, easily dismissed. Yet the nocturnal hours brought with them a peculiar disturbance, a rhythmic pacing from overhead, a sound inconsistent with an empty dwelling, a persistent measured tread that wore at the edges of Zoe's peace. Night after night the pattern repeated, the soft, almost hesitant footfalls. It was a sound that suggested not purpose but a restless energy, a contained anxiety. Zoe, driven by a blend of curiosity and a growing unease, decided she must investigate. She ascended the stairs, her own steps a counterpoint to the memory of those above. Her destination, the door of apartment 6C, the supposed source of this nightly mystery. What she found was not an ordinary door, but a sealed threshold. Police tape, stark and official, crisscrossed its surface, a silent, potent declaration. This was not merely vacant, it was forbidden, a space marked by some past trauma. A neighbour emerged from the shadows of the hallway, their passage almost spectral. A hushed whisper laden with the building's history reached Zoe's ears. "That unit," the neighbour confided, their voice a low murmur. "It's been empty for years. A girl died in there." The information hung heavy in the stale air. Then, a chilling detail. She used to pace, you see, paced and paced whenever she was scared. That night the familiar pacing resumed, but now it carried a new weight, a profound sadness. Zoe, armed with a digital recorder, aimed it at her ceiling, a silent witness to the unseen. At 3:06 a.m. the recording captured not just sound but a visual anomaly. A shadow, faint but undeniable, moved across the footage of her ceiling, mirroring the pacing she had heard. Jacob possessed an artist's eye, a particular fascination with the captured moment, the frozen narrative of a photograph. His preferred medium was monochrome, the stark interplay of light and shadow holding a unique allure. His most treasured piece, a print of an abandoned hospital room, hung in his hallway. It was a study in desolation, a single empty bed, peeling paint, a window gazing out onto an unseen, desolate landscape. It was a scene of profound stillness, or so he had believed. One ordinary afternoon, passing the familiar image, something caught his attention. A subtle alteration, a new element within the meticulously composed frame. A shadow, deep and indistinct, lurked in a corner of the photographed room, a place where no shadow had been before. He blinked, questioning his own perception, the reliability of memory. Perhaps it had always been there, a detail overlooked, but a seed of unease had been planted. The following week, the unease blossomed. The shadow, he was now certain, had not been a trick of the light or a failing of memory. It had shifted. It had crept, almost imperceptibly, closer to the dilapidated doorway depicted within the photograph. This was no longer a static image. It was a scene in slow, silent motion, a narrative unfolding at a glacial, unsettling pace. Each passing day brought a fresh wave of apprehension as he approached the hallway. The phenomenon continued, a relentless, creeping transformation. The shadow, like some patient two-dimensional predator, advanced. From the corner to the wall, then to the very threshold of the door within the picture. It was as if something was emerging from the deeper recesses of that desolate photographed space, drawn towards the boundary between its world and his. Jacob found himself observing it with a mixture of dread and a strange morbid fascination. Eventually the inevitable occurred. The shadow reached the edge of the photographic paper, poised at the very precipice of the frame. For Jenna, the television was more than mere entertainment. It was a constant companion, a source of ambient sound that filled the otherwise silent voids of her solitary apartment. She always left it on, a murmur of voices and music that acted as a lullaby, easing her passage into sleep. This nightly ritual was a comfort, a predictable hum in an unpredictable world. Until the night the ritual was broken, not by her, but by the machine itself. She was adrift in that hazy space between wakefulness and slumber when the change occurred. The familiar cadence of a late-night talk show abruptly ceased, replaced by a jarring burst of static, then silence. Jenna stirred, assuming a power flicker, a lost signal. But then a new image resolved on the screen. It was black and white, grainy, like footage from a bygone era. The content, however, was disturbingly immediate. The camera's perspective was fixed, unsettlingly familiar. It took her a moment, her mind still clouded with sleep, to recognize the scene. It was her own bedroom, her own bed. And, with a sickening lurch, she realized the viewpoint was from behind her, as if the camera were positioned somewhere in the shadows near her headboard, observing her as she slept. A cold dread, sharp and swift, pierced through her drowsiness. She scrambled out of bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her first panicked instinct was to silence the intrusive broadcast. She lunged for the power cord, yanking it from the wall socket with trembling hands. The screen should have gone dark. The television should have fallen silent. But it remained on. The black and white image of her sleeping form persisted, a ghostly tableau playing out in defiance of all logic. Then a voice emanated from the television speakers, low and sibilant, a whisper that seemed to curl around the edges of the room. Lay back down. The call came late. The voice on the other end, a mother's, was strained, tinged with a desperate urgency. Natalie, a seasoned babysitter, recognized the tone, a last-minute cancellation, a sudden need. "We'll be gone a few hours," the mother had said, her words rushed. "He's already asleep. It should be an easy night." The promise of simplicity, however, often conceals unseen complexities. The house, upon her arrival, was enveloped in an almost preternatural quiet. Not the peaceful silence of a sleeping household, but a heavy, expectant stillness, as if the very air held its breath. The parents departed quickly, their relief palpable, leaving Natalie alone in the unfamiliar, unnervingly silent space. She settled in, the quiet beginning to press in on her, a subtle weight. The baby monitor, her only link to the sleeping child, sat on the coffee table. It crackled to life, not with the soft sounds of a slumbering infant, but with a harsh, unwavering static. No whimpers, no rustling, just the hiss of an open, empty channel, an unsettling void where there should have been reassurance. Concern, a small, sharp prickle, prompted her to investigate. She needed to see for herself that the child was safe. She ascended the stairs, each step seeming to echo in the profound silence of the upper floor. The nursery door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, she peered inside. The crib, bathed in the soft glow of a nightlight, was empty. The blankets were undisturbed, the small mattress bare. A wave of cold dread washed over her. Where was the baby? Her gaze scanned the room, searching for any sign, any clue. Her eyes were drawn to the space beneath the crib, a dark recess. Something was there. Liam was navigating the treacherous curves of a mountain road, a familiar route made alien by the late hour and an encroaching, unnaturally dense fog. It rolled in suddenly, a silent white tide, swallowing the familiar landmarks, reducing visibility to mere feet. The world outside his windscreen became an amorphous, shifting canvas of grey, isolating him in a cocoon of vapour. He instinctively slowed the car, peering intently into the swirling whiteness. It was then he saw it, a figure, standing motionless in the very centre of the narrow road, a dark silhouette against the pale backdrop of the fog. Liam blinked, his eyes straining. In that instant, the figure was gone, as if the mist itself had simply reabsorbed it. He told himself it was a trick of the light, a phantom conjured by fatigue and the disorienting conditions. Yet, the image lingered, unsettlingly vivid. A few miles further, the fog began to thin in patches, offering fleeting glimpses of the dark tree line. And then he saw it again. The figure, closer this time, standing by the roadside, its form slightly more distinct, pale, utterly still. Its presence there, in the desolate wilderness, miles from any dwelling, was profoundly wrong. He swerved instinctively, his heart leaping into his throat, the tires screeching a brief protest on the damp asphalt. He pressed on, the encounter replaying in his mind, the rational explanations feeling increasingly flimsy against the weight of his unease. His phone, resting on the passenger seat, suddenly buzzed, the screen illuminating the cabin with a stark, cold light. You've just heard 5 of the darkest stories from the listener's void. These whispers from the edge of reality, these accounts of encounters with the inexplicable, now settle in the quiet corners of your mind. Each narrative, a unique tapestry of fear and unease, has its own particular way of clinging to the psyche. Which one will haunt you tonight? Which shadow will lengthen in your peripheral vision? Which unexplained sound will echo in the stillness of your own home? The darkness holds many tales, and the void is always listening, always waiting for new voices, new experiences to share. We invite you to contribute to this growing collection of the unsettling. Let us know in the comments which of these particular visitations resonated most deeply with your own latent fears. Got a true scary story of your own? A brush with the unexplained that still sends a shiver down your spine? We encourage you to share it. Send it to listenersvoid@gmail.com or comment below. You might be featured in the next video, your experience becoming another echo in this shared space of unease. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, because some stories don't stay quiet forever. They seek an audience, they yearn to be told, and the more they are shared, the more their power grows, rippling outwards into the collective consciousness. #True Scary Stories #narrated. Horror # paranormal encounters # faceless content # the listener's void.